Jake Miller walked down the crowded London street with his hands in his pockets. The weather was cold, and dark clouds filled the sky above the city. Jake was not a normal young man. At 25 years old, he had already spent 8 years with the Red Street Boys, one of the most feared gangs in East London. His arms showed many tattoos that told the story of his hard life, and a long scar ran across his right cheek. Jake had never been good at school. His father left when he was young, and his mother worked 3 jobs just to pay the rent. By the time Jake was 15, he had already joined the gang. They gave him money, protection, and what he thought was respect. The gang became his new family. Today was an important day. Ray, the gang leader, had called Jake to his apartment early in the morning. Ray's place was small and dirty, with old food containers on the tables and empty beer bottles on the floor. The walls were covered with gang signs and pictures of Ray with famous criminals. "Jake, my boy, sit down," Ray said, pointing to a torn sofa. Ray was a big man with a shaved head and gold teeth that shined when he smiled. He had been running the gang for 15 years and was known for his cruelty. "We need to show everyone that the Red Street Boys are still the strongest gang in London," Ray said as he lit a cigarette. "Those West Side killers think they can take over our territory. We need to do something big, something that will be on every news channel." Jake nodded, wondering what Ray wanted him to do. Usually, his jobs involved selling drugs or scaring people who owed money to the gang. But Ray's serious face told him this was something bigger. "There's a royal guard who stands outside Buckingham Palace," Ray continued, blowing smoke into the air. "I want you to attack him. Not kill him, just cut him with a knife. It will show everyone how brave we are. No one has ever dared to attack the Queen's guards." Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was not like other jobs. The royal guards were trained soldiers. They protected the royal family. Attacking one would mean serious prison time if he got caught. "I don't know, Ray," Jake said slowly. "That sounds risky." Ray's friendly smile disappeared. His eyes became cold and hard. "Are you saying no to me, Jake? After everything I've done for you? When those guys from the South Side wanted to kill you last year, who protected you? When your mother got sick, who gave you money for her medicine?" Jake looked down at his hands. He knew he had no choice. In the gang, you either followed orders or you were out, and being out of the gang was dangerous. Former members often ended up dead in alleyways or rivers. "Okay, I'll do it," Jake said finally. Ray's smile returned. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife with a black handle. The blade was about 6 inches long and looked very sharp. "Good boy," Ray said, handing the knife to Jake. "Take a few days to watch the guards. Learn their routine. Then do it when there are lots of tourists around so you can escape in the crowd." Jake took the knife and put it in his jacket pocket. It felt heavy, like it was pulling him down. "Don't fail me, Jake," Ray warned as Jake stood up to leave. "This is your chance to become a legend in our world. Your name will be known by every gang in London." As Jake walked out of the apartment and into the cold street, he felt trapped. He didn't want to attack a royal guard, but he was too afraid to say no to Ray. The gang was all he knew. It was his life. Jake decided to go to Buckingham Palace right away. He needed to see these guards, to understand what he was up against. As he walked toward the subway station, dark thoughts filled his mind. He wondered if there was any way out of this situation. But deep down, he knew there wasn't. He had made his choice years ago when he joined the gang, and now he had to live with it. The knife in his pocket seemed to get heavier with each step he took. For 3 days, Jake watched the royal guards outside Buckingham Palace. He stood among the tourists, trying to look like just another visitor taking photos. The guards were a famous sight in London. They wore bright red coats and tall black fur hats. They stood very still, like statues, not moving even when tourists tried to make them laugh or smile. Jake learned many things during those 3 days. He learned that the guards changed positions every 2 hours in a ceremony called the changing of the guard. He learned that some posts had 2 guards, while others had just 1. He learned that the guards were not just men in fancy clothes, but real soldiers who had fought in wars in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. On the 3rd day, Jake found the perfect target. There was one guard who stood at a post slightly away from the main entrance. Fewer tourists gathered there, and the guard stood alone. Jake decided this would be the guard he would attack. The guard Jake chose was tall and stood very straight. His face showed no emotion as he stared ahead. His red coat was perfectly clean, and his black boots shined in the sunlight. A rifle rested on his shoulder. Jake wondered if it was loaded. Jake sat on a bench across from the guard and pretended to eat a sandwich. In his mind, he went over his plan again and again. He would walk up to the guard as if to take a photo. Then he would quickly pull out the knife, cut the guard on the arm, and run away into the crowd. Simple and fast. But as Jake watched the guard, strange thoughts began to fill his mind. Who was this man behind the uniform? Did he have a family? Children waiting for him to come home? What had made him choose to become a royal guard? Jake shook his head to clear these thoughts. He could not think of the guard as a real person. That would make the job harder. In the gang, Jake had learned to see targets as objects, not people. But something about this guard made that difficult. As the day went on, Jake noticed small things about the guard. Despite standing completely still, the guard's eyes moved slightly, scanning the area. Once, when a child dropped an ice cream cone near his feet, the corner of the guard's mouth twitched, almost like he wanted to smile. These tiny movements reminded Jake that under the fancy uniform was a human being. The sun began to set, and Jake knew he should go back to his small apartment. Tomorrow would be the day he carried out Ray's orders. He needed to rest and prepare, but he found it hard to leave his spot on the bench. A group of school children walked by, pointing and giggling at the guard. Their teacher explained that the guard was from the British Army and that standing guard at the palace was a great honor. Jake listened carefully. He had never thought about honor before. In his world, respect came from fear, not honor. As Jake finally stood up to leave, he felt the weight of the knife in his pocket again. For the first time since joining the gang, he wondered if he was on the wrong path. What kind of honor was there in attacking a man who could not fight back? A man who stood proudly serving his country. But then Jake remembered Ray's cold eyes and the threat behind his words. He remembered what happened to gang members who failed their assignments. A boy named Mikey had refused to beat up a shop owner last year. They found Mikey's body in the Thames River a week later. Jake walked away from Buckingham Palace as the streetlights came on. His mind was filled with confusion. Part of him wanted to throw the knife into the river and never go back to the gang. But another part knew that the gang was all he had. Without them, he was nothing. That night, Jake barely slept. His dreams were filled with red coats and tall black hats. In one dream, he saw himself wearing the uniform, standing proud and tall. In another, he saw himself lying on the ground while the guard stood over him. When he woke up, the knife was in his hand, though he did not remember taking it out. Tomorrow would be the day. There was no turning back now. Jake woke up early on Thursday morning. Today was the day he would attack the royal guard. His stomach felt tight with worry, and his hand shook slightly as he got dressed. He chose dark blue jeans and a black hoodie, simple clothes that would not make him stand out. He pulled the hood up to hide his face from security cameras. The knife sat on his small kitchen table. Jake stared at it for a long time before picking it up and putting it in his pocket. The same heavy feeling came back, like the knife was made of lead instead of steel. Jake took the subway to the station nearest Buckingham Palace. The train car was full of people going to work. Normal people with normal lives. A woman read a book. A man in a business suit checked his phone. 2 schoolboys laughed at a joke. Jake wondered what it would be like to be one of them. To wake up without fear. To not have to follow orders from someone like Ray. When Jake reached the palace, it was just past 10 in the morning. Tourists were already gathering to watch the guards. Jake walked slowly around the area, keeping his head down. He saw the guard he had chosen standing at the same post as before. The guard looked exactly the same as yesterday. Tall, still, and proud in his red coat and tall black hat. Jake joined a group of American tourists who were taking photos. He pretended to take pictures with his phone while getting closer to the guard. His heart beat faster with each step. The knife seemed to burn in his pocket. From just 10 feet away, Jake could see the guard's face clearly. He was younger than Jake had thought, maybe just a few years older than Jake himself. His eyes were blue, and a small scar marked his chin. He stared straight ahead, but Jake could tell he was aware of everything around him. The moment had come. Jake took a deep breath and moved even closer. Now he was just 5 feet from the guard. He put his hand in his pocket and touched the knife. His legs felt weak, like they might give out. A voice in his head screamed at him to stop, to turn around and walk away. But another voice, one that sounded like Ray, told him to do it now, to prove he was loyal to the gang. Just as Jake was about to pull out the knife, a small boy broke away from his parents and ran right up to the guard. The boy, no more than 5 years old, smiled at the guard and said, "My daddy says you fought bad guys to keep us safe. Is that true?" For a second, the guard's face softened. He did not speak or move, but his eyes flickered down to the boy with what looked like kindness. The boy's father hurried over and took his hand, saying, "Sorry, sir. Come on, Tommy. We can't bother the guard when he's working." As the father led the boy away, the child looked back and waved. The guard did not wave back, but Jake saw his lips twitch in a tiny smile. Something broke inside Jake at that moment. He could not do this. He could not attack this man who protected children like Tommy, who stood tall and did his duty without complaint, who had probably risked his life in war to keep others safe. Jake backed away slowly, his hand coming out of his pocket empty. Sweat ran down his back despite the cool day. He needed to think. He needed time. Jake found a bench far from the guard and sat down. His mind raced. If he did not attack the guard, Ray would be furious. Jake might even end up like Mikey, floating in the Thames. But if he did attack the guard, he would be caught and sent to prison. The guards were not just for show. They were real soldiers who knew how to fight. For the first time in years, Jake felt truly trapped. The gang life that had once seemed to offer freedom now felt like chains around his neck. As he sat on the bench, watching tourists take photos with the guards, Jake began to wonder if there was a third choice, something he had not thought of yet. He stood up and walked away from the palace, the knife still in his pocket. He had made a decision, but it was not the one Ray wanted. Jake would have to find another way out of this mess. He just hoped he could stay alive long enough to do it. Jake did not go home that night. He knew Ray would be waiting for news, and Jake had nothing to tell him. Instead, he spent the night walking through London, thinking about what to do. The knife felt heavier in his pocket with each step. By morning, Jake had made no decision. He was tired, hungry, and afraid. His phone had 20 missed calls from Ray and other gang members. They were looking for him. If Jake did not return soon with proof that he had attacked the guard, he would be in serious trouble. Jake bought a cheap coffee and a sandwich from a small shop. As he ate, he watched the morning news on the shop's small TV. The top story was about a gang shooting in East London. 3 members of the West Side Killers had been shot. The police believed it was the work of the Red Street Boys, Jake's gang. Ray had not been waiting for Jake's attack. He had already started a gang war. Jake was just a small part of a bigger plan. This made Jake angry. Why should he risk going to prison or getting hurt when Ray did not even need his help? Jake finished his coffee and left the shop. He started walking back toward Buckingham Palace. His mind was made up. He would not attack the guard. He would throw the knife away and tell Ray that he had tried but failed. Maybe Ray would believe him. Maybe not. But Jake could not bring himself to hurt the guard. But when Jake arrived at the palace, something had changed. There were more tourists than usual, and TV news vans were parked nearby. Jake asked a woman what was happening. "The Queen is coming to the palace today," she said excitedly. "She has been at her country home for the winter, but she is returning to London now. The royal family will appear on the balcony in 1 hour." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was why Ray had picked today for the attack. He had known the Queen would be here. An attack on a royal guard on the same day the Queen visited would get even more attention. Jake had been set up to be part of something much worse than he had thought. Jake moved closer to where his target guard stood. The guard was the same man as before, standing straight and tall. But today there were 2 other guards nearby. Security was tighter because of the Queen's visit. As Jake watched, Ray suddenly appeared in the crowd. He was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, but Jake recognized him immediately. Ray saw Jake and nodded, pointing at the guard with a small movement of his head. The message was clear. Do it now. Jake's heart raced. He was caught between Ray and the guards. If he ran, Ray would find him later. If he attacked the guard, he would be caught and arrested. There seemed to be no way out. Then Jake noticed something. Ray was not alone. 2 other gang members were in the crowd, watching Jake. One of them, a man named Vince, had his hand in his pocket. Jake knew Vince always carried a gun. The truth hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. If Jake did not attack the guard, Vince would shoot him. And maybe shoot others in the crowd too. Time seemed to slow down. Jake looked at the guard, then at Ray, then back at the guard. He had seconds to decide. His hand moved to his pocket and gripped the knife. He took a deep breath and started walking toward the guard. The guard saw him coming. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Jake saw no fear in the guard's eyes, only readiness. This man had faced danger before. He knew how to handle threats. Jake was just 5 steps away now. He pulled the knife from his pocket and held it by his side, hidden from the crowd, but visible to the guard. 4 steps, 3 steps. The guard's hand moved slightly on his rifle. 2 steps. In that moment, Jake made his final choice. He did not lunge at the guard as Ray had ordered. Instead, he dropped to his knees and placed the knife on the ground. Then he raised his hands in the air and said in a clear voice, "Help me. There are armed gang members in the crowd. They forced me to attack you." The world exploded into action around him. The royal guard moved faster than Jake thought possible. In one smooth motion, the guard stepped forward, moved his rifle, and signaled to the other guards. Within seconds, Jake was surrounded by 3 royal guards, their faces serious and alert. "There is a man with a gun in the crowd," Jake said quickly, pointing toward where Ray and Vince stood. "The man in the red cap and the tall man next to him. They wanted me to attack you." The main guard nodded once and spoke into a small radio hidden in his uniform. His voice was calm but firm. "Possible armed suspects at Section 4. Male in red cap and tall male companion." Tourists began to notice that something was wrong. Some backed away, while others took out phones to record what was happening. Palace security officers rushed into the crowd, moving toward Ray and Vince. Jake watched as Ray's face changed from confusion to anger. Ray realized that Jake had betrayed him. For a second, Ray looked like he might run at Jake. But then palace security was there, surrounding Ray and Vince. Vince tried to pull something from his pocket, but a security officer grabbed his arm. There was a short struggle, and then Vince was on the ground, his hands behind his back. A security officer pulled a gun from Vince's pocket. People in the crowd screamed when they saw the gun, and more security rushed in. Ray tried to run, pushing through the crowd of tourists. He knocked over an old woman and a small child in his rush to escape, but he did not get far. 2 police officers who had been nearby caught him just outside the palace gates. Ray fought hard, punching one officer in the face. But soon Ray was also on the ground in handcuffs. Jake felt a strange mix of relief and fear. He had done the right thing by warning the guard. But now what would happen to him? He was still a gang member. He had still brought a knife to the palace with the plan to attack a guard. Would he go to prison? A police car arrived, its lights flashing. 2 officers led Jake to the car. They did not put handcuffs on him, which Jake thought was a good sign. As they walked, the royal guard that Jake had almost attacked looked at him. For a brief moment, the guard nodded at Jake, a small sign of respect for Jake's final choice. At the police station, Jake was taken to a small room with a table and 3 chairs. They gave him a cup of water and told him to wait. He sat there for what felt like hours, wondering what would happen next. Finally, the door opened. A man and a woman entered. They wore regular clothes, not police uniforms. The woman had short brown hair and kind eyes. The man was tall and had a serious face. "Hello, Jake," the woman said. "I am Detective Sarah Wilson, and this is Detective Mark Thomas. We would like to talk to you about what happened today and about the Red Street Boys." Jake looked at his cup of water. He knew what they wanted. They wanted him to tell them everything about the gang. Names, places, crimes. If he did that, he would never be safe again. The gang would hunt him down. "We know you are scared," Detective Wilson said, as if reading his mind. "But we can help you. The men you pointed out today, Ray Thompson and Vincent Blake, are wanted for several serious crimes, including 3 murders. With your help, we can put them in prison for a long time." Jake looked up, surprised. "You know who they are?" "We have been watching the Red Street Boys for months," Detective Thomas said. "We just needed evidence to arrest the leaders. You gave us that today." "What will happen to me?" Jake asked. "Will I go to prison?" The detectives looked at each other. Then Detective Wilson leaned forward. "That depends on how much you help us. But I promise you this. We can keep you safe. We can give you a new start, away from London and away from the gangs." For the first time that day, Jake felt a small spark of hope. A new start. A life away from the fear and violence of the gang. It sounded like a dream. "Okay," Jake said finally. "I will tell you everything I know." And so he began to talk, not knowing that his decision would change not just his life, but the lives of many others. For 6 hours, Jake sat in that small room and told the detectives everything he knew about the Red Street Boys. He told them about drug deals and stolen cars. He told them about fights with other gangs and shops that paid for protection. He gave them names and places and dates. "Ray has a warehouse near the old factory on River Street," Jake said. "That is where they keep the drugs and guns. The door has a special lock that only Ray and Vince have keys for." Detective Thomas wrote everything down in a small notebook. Sometimes he would stop Jake and ask more questions about a person or place. Detective Wilson recorded everything on a small tape recorder that sat on the table between them. "What about the shooting yesterday?" Detective Wilson asked. "The 3 members of the West Side Killers. Do you know who did that?" Jake shook his head. "I was not there, but Ray has a special group that does the shootings. He calls them his soldiers. There are 5 of them. The leader is a man named Derek. He has a snake tattoo on his neck." As Jake talked, he felt like a weight was lifting from his shoulders. For years, he had carried the secrets of the gang, always afraid of saying the wrong thing to the wrong person. Now he was telling everything, and it felt good. When Jake finished, Detective Thomas closed his notebook and stood up. "Thank you, Jake. This information will help us a lot. I need to talk to my boss now. Detective Wilson will stay with you." After Detective Thomas left, Detective Wilson gave Jake a sandwich and another cup of water. "You did well," she said. "I know that was not easy." Jake took a bite of the sandwich, suddenly realizing how hungry he was. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we make a plan," Detective Wilson said. "The information you gave us will help us arrest many members of the Red Street Boys, but it also means you cannot go back to your old life. It would not be safe for you." Jake nodded. He had known this would happen. "So what can I do?" Where can I go? We have a program for people like you, Detective Wilson explained. It is called the Witness Protection Program. We give you a new name, a new place to live, and help you find a job. You start a completely new life. It sounded strange and scary to Jake. A new name, a new place, but also exciting. A chance to be someone else, someone better. Would I be able to see my mother? Jake asked. His mother was the only family he had left. They did not talk much, but he still cared about her. Detective Wilson's face became sad. That would be difficult. Contact with anyone from your old life could put you in danger. But we might be able to arrange something after some time has passed, and it is safer. Jake looked down at his hands. The sandwich suddenly tasted like nothing in his mouth. He had not thought about this part, leaving everyone and everything behind. But what choice did he have? If he stayed, the gang would kill him for sure. Detective Thomas returned with an older man in a suit. The man had gray hair and glasses. He looked at Jake with serious eyes. "Jake, this is Chief Inspector Harris," Detective Wilson said. "He is in charge of the operation against the Red Street Boys." Chief Inspector Harris sat down across from Jake. "The information you have given us is very valuable," he said. "Based on what you told us, we are planning to raid the warehouse tonight. We hope to arrest many gang members and find evidence that will help us put them in prison for a long time." Jake nodded, not sure what to say. "We would like you to help us one more time," Chief Inspector Harris continued. "We need you to draw a map of the warehouse. Show us where the doors are, where they keep the guns and drugs, and any other important information that could help our officers during the raid." Jake thought about it. He had already told them so much. What difference would a map make? And if it helped to put Ray and the others in prison, maybe Jake would be safer in his new life. "Okay," Jake said. "I will draw your map." They gave him paper and pencils, and Jake began to draw. As he worked, he thought about the new life waiting for him. A life without fear, without violence, without the gang. It still did not feel real. But for the first time in years, Jake felt something new. Late that night, Jake sat in a police van 2 blocks away from the warehouse. He was not supposed to be there. The detectives had wanted him to stay at the station, but Jake had begged to come along. He needed to see it happen. He needed to see the gang being taken down. "Remember, you stay in the van," Chief Inspector Harris told him firmly. "No matter what happens, you do not get out. Officer Taylor will stay with you." Jake nodded. Officer Taylor was a young policeman who sat next to Jake in the van. He had a radio that let them hear what was happening with the police operation. Through the front window of the van, Jake could see police officers getting ready. They wore dark uniforms and bulletproof vests. Some carried large shields. Others had special tools to break down doors. They all had guns. At exactly midnight, Chief Inspector Harris gave the order. "All units, move in now." The police moved quickly and quietly toward the warehouse. Jake watched, his heart beating fast. This was really happening. The gang that had controlled his life for so long was about to be caught. From the radio came the sounds of the operation. Front team in position. Back team ready. Roof team in place. Then, go, go, go. Jake could not see the warehouse from where he sat, but he could imagine what was happening. The police breaking down the doors, running inside with their guns ready, the surprise on the faces of the gang members who were inside. The radio crackled with voices. Kitchen clear. Office clear. First floor secure. Then suddenly, shots fired. Shots fired. Second floor. Jake and Officer Taylor looked at each other. Someone in the warehouse was shooting at the police. Jake felt sick. What if a police officer was hurt or killed because of his information? More voices came from the radio. Suspect down. Officer hit. Need medical. 2 more suspects in custody. Time seemed to move very slowly. Jake sat in the van, listening to the radio and wondering what was happening. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, The radio announced, "All clear, building secure." Officer Taylor smiled at Jake. "They did it," he said. "They got them all." A little while later, Chief Inspector Harris returned to the van. His uniform was dirty, and he looked tired, but he was smiling. 17 arrests, he told Jake. "We found guns, drugs, and over 100,000 pounds in cash. All thanks to your information." "Was anyone hurt?" Jake asked. "One officer was shot in the arm. He will be okay. One gang member was also shot when he fired at our officers. He is in the hospital but will live." Jake felt relieved. No one had died. The operation had worked. "What about the leaders?" Jake asked. "Did you get Derek? The one with the snake tattoo?" Chief Inspector Harris nodded. "We got him. And with the evidence we found in the warehouse, plus your testimony, all of them will go to prison for a very long time." Jake looked out the window at the night sky. It was hard to believe that just yesterday, he had been a gang member about to attack a royal guard. Now he was helping the police bring down the entire gang. Life could change so quickly. "What happens to me now?" Jake asked. "Now we get you to safety," Chief Inspector Harris said. "Detective Wilson has arranged everything. Tomorrow morning, you will leave London. You will have a new name, new papers, and a new place to live." "Where will I go?" Jake asked. "I cannot tell you that," Chief Inspector Harris said. "And you cannot tell anyone else either. The fewer people who know, the safer you will be." Jake nodded. He understood. This was the price of his new life. Complete secrecy. "One more thing," Chief Inspector Harris said, handing Jake a small bag. "These are your new clothes and a few basic things you will need. Do not take anything from your old life with you. No photos, no letters, nothing that could connect you to Jake Miller." Jake took the bag. It felt strange to think that tomorrow he would not be Jake anymore. He would be someone else entirely, a new person with a new chance at life. As the van drove back to the police station, Jake looked out at the streets of London for what might be the last time. The city where he had grown up. The city where he had joined the gang and done bad things. The city he would now leave behind. Tomorrow, his new life would begin. Early the next morning, Jake sat in the back of a plain black car with Detective Wilson. He wore new clothes from the bag Chief Inspector Harris had given him. Blue jeans, a simple gray sweater, and a brown jacket. His hair had been cut short, and he now wore glasses with clear lenses. It was part of his new look, to help him look different from the old Jake. "Remember, your new name is David Cooper," Detective Wilson said. "You are 25 years old, born in Manchester. You moved around a lot because your father was in the army. You studied mechanics for a year at college, but did not finish. All this information is in your new papers." Jake, now David, nodded. He had spent the early hours of the morning memorizing his new life story. It was simple enough, and close enough to his real life that he would not make mistakes when talking about it. "What will I do?" he asked. "Where will I work?" "We have found you a job at a garage in a small town," Detective Wilson explained. "The owner knows you are in witness protection, but not why. He has agreed to train you and give you a chance. The rest is up to you, David." David. It still felt strange to think of himself with that name, but he had to get used to it. "There is a small apartment above a shop," Detective Wilson continued. "It is paid for 3 months. After that, you will need to pay rent yourself from your job at the garage. We will also give you some money to help you get started, but it is not much." The car drove out of London and onto the highway. David did not know which direction they were going. North, south, east, west. He had no idea. That was part of the plan. He was not supposed to know exactly where he was going until he got there. As they drove, David thought about the life he was leaving behind. He had not been allowed to say goodbye to anyone, not even his mother. Detective Wilson had promised that someone would tell his mother he was safe, but nothing more. It was better that way, safer for everyone. David also thought about the royal guard, the man he had almost attacked. He wondered if the guard knew what had happened after David was taken away by the police. Did he know that his would-be attacker had helped bring down an entire gang? Probably not. The guard was just doing his job, standing tall and proud in his red coat and black hat, protecting the palace like he did every day. After 3 hours of driving, they stopped at a service station for coffee. As they sat at a small table, Detective Wilson handed David a phone. "This is for emergencies only," she said. "It has one number programmed into it. If you think you are in danger, if you think someone from the gang has found you, call that number immediately. We will come and move you to a new location." David took the phone and put it in his pocket. He hoped he would never need to use it. Back in the car, they drove for another 2 hours. Finally, they turned off the highway and began to drive through small country roads. They passed fields and farms and small villages. It was so different from the busy streets of London. At last, they came to a small town. It looked peaceful, with a main street of shops, a church with a tall spire, and houses with gardens. The car stopped in front of a garage called Miller's Motors. "This is it," Detective Wilson said. "Your new home." A man came out of the garage. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and strong arms covered in oil stains. He smiled as David got out of the car. "You must be David," the man said, holding out his hand. "I am Frank Miller, owner of Miller's Motors. Welcome to Oakfield." David shook the man's hand. So this town was called Oakfield. He had never heard of it before. Detective Wilson got out of the car and spoke with Frank for a few minutes. Then she came to David and handed him a small envelope. "Your new papers, keys to your apartment, and some money to get started," she said. "Remember everything we talked about. Keep a low profile. Do not tell anyone your real story. Do not contact anyone from your old life." David nodded. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Detective Wilson smiled. "Good luck, David Cooper. Make the most of this second chance." Then she got back in the car and drove away, leaving David standing in front of the garage with Frank Miller. His new life had begun. "Come on then," Frank said. "Let me show you around the garage, and then we will get you settled in your apartment." David followed Frank into the garage, feeling both scared and excited. This small town, this job, this new name, it was all so strange. But it was also a fresh start, a chance to be someone different, someone better. As he looked around at the tools and cars in the garage, David made a promise to himself. He would not waste this opportunity. He would build a good life here, a life he could be proud of. A life where he stood tall and did the right thing, just like that royal guard had done. The morning sun shone through the windows of the small apartment above the bookshop. David Cooper, once known as Jake Miller, stood in front of the mirror adjusting his tie. It was a bright blue tie, the same color as the shirt of the local football team. David now supported them, even going to matches when he could afford tickets. It had been 1 year since David had arrived in Oakfield. 1 year since he had left behind his old life as a gang member in London. 1 year of building a new life, piece by piece. The work at Miller's Motors had been hard at first. David knew some things about cars, but not nearly enough. Frank had been patient, teaching David everything he needed to know. Now David could fix most car problems on his own. The customers liked him, and Frank had even talked about making David a partner in the business someday. David had made friends too. Not many, just a few people who he felt he could trust. There was Emma, who worked at the coffee shop on Main Street. She always saved the best pastries for David when he came in for his morning coffee. There was old Mr. Wilson, who brought his classic car to the garage every month for David to check, even though it never needed any work. And there was Tom, another mechanic at the garage, who had invited David to join the local football team. None of them knew David's real story. They thought he was just a regular guy who had moved to their town for a fresh start. That was true enough, in its way. As David finished getting ready, He looked at the small calendar on his wall. Today was circled in red. It was an important day. Today, the trial of Ray Thompson and the other leaders of the Red Street Boys would end. The verdict would be announced. David had testified at the trial 6 months ago. It had been the hardest thing he had ever done. Sitting in the witness box, looking at Ray and the others, telling the court about the crimes the gang had committed. Ray had stared at David with hate in his eyes the whole time. But David had not looked away. He had told the truth, no matter how scary it was. After his testimony, David had returned to Oakfield with a police escort. For weeks afterward, he had jumped at every strange noise, worried that someone from the gang had found him. But no one had come. Life had gone back to normal, or what passed for normal in David's new life. Today, Detective Wilson would call David to tell him the verdict. David was nervous. If Ray and the others went to prison for a long time, David would be safer. If not, he might have to move again, start over in yet another new place. David finished getting ready and left his apartment. It was Saturday, but he had promised Frank he would help with a special job today. A customer had brought in a rare old car that needed careful restoration. It was the kind of work David enjoyed most. As David walked to the garage, he greeted the people he passed. The baker setting up his shop, the woman walking her dog, the postman delivering the mail. Small things, normal things, but they made David feel like he belonged here. At the garage, Frank was already working on the old car. His face was smudged with oil, and he was humming a tune as he worked. "Morning, David," Frank said with a smile, ready to bring this beauty back to life. David nodded and put on his work clothes. They spent the morning working on the car, talking about normal things. The weather, the football match tomorrow, the new restaurant that had opened in town. Around noon, David's phone rang. It was the emergency phone that Detective Wilson had given him a year ago. David's heart beat faster as he answered it. "Hello," he said, stepping outside the garage for privacy. "David, it is Detective Wilson," came the familiar voice. "I have news from the trial." David took a deep breath. What happened? "Guilty on all charges," Detective Wilson said, and David could hear the smile in her voice. "Ray Thompson got 25 years. Vincent Blake got 20. Derek and the other leaders got between 15 and 20 years each. With good behavior, they might get out sooner, but not for at least 10 years. David felt a wave of relief wash over him. 10 years. 10 years of safety. 10 years to build his new life even stronger. "Thank you for telling me," David said. "How are you doing, David?" Detective Wilson asked. "Are you happy there?" David looked back at the garage, where Frank was still working on the old car. He thought about his small apartment, his job, his new friends. It was not a perfect life. It was not an exciting life. But it was a good life. An honest life. "Yes," David said. "I am happy here." After the call ended, David went back into the garage. Frank looked up from his work. "Everything okay?" Frank asked. David nodded. "Everything is good," he said, and for the first time in a very long time, he truly believed it. As David went back to work on the car, he thought about how much his life had changed in just 1 year. From a gang member about to attack a royal guard to a mechanic in a small town. From Jake Miller to David Cooper. From a life of fear to a life of hope. The royal guard had stood tall and done his duty. Now David was trying to do the same in his own way. Standing tall. Doing his duty. Being the kind of man he could be proud to see in the mirror each morning. David smiled as he worked. The past was behind him now. The future, with all its possibilities, lay ahead.